Okay. Well, good evening, and welcome to the May 17th governing body meeting. We will start with an invocation from Councilwoman Ortiz. If you'll give your attention to her, stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to call Kobe Hall to the podium, please. We're going to do a couple of things tonight. First, let me introduce Kobe Hall. He's an 8th grade student at Eisenhower Middle School and in his second year of College Prep Academy. He hopes to eventually go to college for sociology with computer science as a secondary option. Kobe is involved with his local church, youth group, and leader among his peers, and his church is the Sent Church. I'm trying to think of the name of that. Help me out here, Kobe. Fellowship Highcrest, yes. Kobe, we are so glad that you came forward to help us to pray tonight. There's plenty of room and plenty of jobs at the city of Topeka, so hopefully next year when you get through college, you'll come back and give us your application, and we'll find space for him, won't we, Neil? We'll find somewhere. Okay, so first I want us to take a moment of silence for the murder victims in the community of Buffalo tonight, and then followed by a moment of silence, we'll have Mr. Kobe Hall go into prayer for us. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kobe Hall.
Thank you for the introduction, Councilwoman Ortiz. I appreciate it. Please bow your heads and close your eyes in giving honor to God. Dear Lord, I would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for allowing everyone to get here safely this afternoon and allowing us to hold this meeting orderly. Let the important people here function orderly and organized so that we may finish this accordingly. I ask that you move within this room and everyone in the community. Please allow the proceedings to run smoothly. Please let the people of Topeka support the leadership of the people in this room, and let the leaders and heads of this community make progressive decisions today. Please let us make it home safe once this is finished. In your Son's name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Councilmembers Hiller.
Here.
Valdivia Aquila. Here. Ortiz.
Here.
Emerson.
Here.
Kell.
Here.
Nager.
Here.
Dobler.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
And Lesser.
Here.
We have 10 present.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the second item on the agenda, and these are mayoral proclamations. We have, I think, 4 of them tonight, and they're all very worthy of our attention. So the first one we will have tonight is a certificate, of recognition for the Washburn Rural High School girls varsity basketball team. And I think there are a few of them in the room today. So is the coach here too, Kevin? Coach? If you want to join me, and or if you want some of the team to join me up here on the dais as I read this, you're welcome to. If you want, you can squeeze it up here. Okay, a certificate of recognition for the Washburn Rural High School Girls Varsity Basketball Team. The Washburn Rural High School Girls Varsity Basketball Team finished the 21-22 season as the number 3 seeded team with a record of 20-2, and won the 6A state championship to finish the season with a record of 23-2. The 2021-22 team members included seniors Campbell Bagshaw, Caitlin Brogan, Emma Kruger, McKenna Schuler, Trina Whitmore, juniors Chloe Colgren, Brooklyn DeLay, and Maya Lutz, sophomore Zoe Canfield, Jada Ingram, and Destiny Oates, freshman Henley Bunnan. Individual player accomplishments were as follows. Emma Kruger, first team Centennial League, All Shawnee County, top 10 sports news, second team All-State KSH SAA covered, 5-state All-Tournament Team Sports in Kansas, first team 5A All-State Sports in Kansas, first team 5A All-State All-Kansas Basketball Coaches Association, and All-Star Game Selection Kansas Basketball Coaches. Brooklyn DeLay, first team Centennial League All Shawnee County top 10 top sports news, second team 5A All State Sports in Kansas, honorable mention All State KSH SAA covered, honorable mention All State Kansas Basketball Coaches Association, Zoe Canfield, second team Centennial League, honorable mention Centennial League, newcomer of the year, top sports news, All Shawnee County honorable mention, top sports news, honorable mention 5A All State Sports in Kansas, Jada Ingram, All Shawnee County honorable mention, top sports news, Maya Lutz, again, I guess, the All Shawnee County honorable mention. The Washburn Rural High School Lady Blues were coached by head coach Kevin Borderick. Associate coaches Phil Hamilton, Haley Slade, and Coulter Scott. Head coach Kevin Borderick received Coach of the Year, all classes sports in Kansas, 6A Coach of the Year, Kansas Basketball Coaches Association, KSH SAA covered, Centennial League Co-Coach of the Year, and Shawnee County Coach of the Year, top sports news. This group of fine athletes have brought a sense of pride and accomplishment to their school and its athletic programs, as well as to the city of Topeka. In witness hereof, I do hereby affix my official signature and the official seal of the city of Topeka, Kansas, on the 17th day of May, 2022. Congratulations, Coach. Quite some accomplishments. Certainly, we'll have a couple of words to say. Okay.
I wasn't prepared for that. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for having us and hosting us. I'm sorry we didn't get more of our team, but we had a softball practice, we have a soccer game, and a lot of our girls play multiple sports. But I know that they couldn't have made us at Washburn Rural and the community around us and the city of Topeka more proud of how hard these kids work, but more importantly, what great kids they are. I hope they represent us even better in the future, but they've got a great start on that. So thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, the next opportunity I have today is to recognize some of our city employees. Sometimes we get sidetracked with asking questions and wondering where all this information is that we're looking for, and sometimes we look more to find things that still need to be done and don't take the time to recognize those things that have been done. And today, I'd like to be able to take this opportunity as part of National Public Works Week. Tony, if you want to join me up here, you're welcome. And if you have any of your staff that you would like to bring with you. I know we got them here on the false pretense that we were going to be asking them questions, but we're here to recognize your efforts and your work. A proclamation by the mayor. Whereas public works services are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives in programs such as water, sewers, streets and traffic, urban forestry, GIS, public buildings, parking, fleet services, and whereas Topeka's health, safety, and comfort are dependent on these services. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of public works services are vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of those that work in these fields. And whereas the efficiency of the public works staff is influenced by the citizens' understanding of the importance of the work they perform. And whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week with the theme Public Works, Ready and Resilient. And now therefore I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do hereby proclaim May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week. And I encourage all citizens to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, and quality of life. In witness thereof, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby affix my official seal and signature of Topeka, Kansas on the 17th day of May 2022. Tony, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like the utilities and public works staff members that came here tonight, that are in the back of the room, to stand up. Utilities and public works staff members. The real thanks goes to the almost 400 employees that we have in utilities and public works. These are the unsung heroes that make this city work. These are the guys that at 2 a.m., 10 degrees below zero, are down in a trench. We're all warm in bed, and they're actually repairing a water line break. It's the guys after a storm that go out and reset all the traffic signals. It's the call center people that relentlessly take those calls every minute of every day. Those are the real heroes. We take a lot of credit. We may be the face of the organization. Thanks to our managers, thanks to all of our employees in utilities and public works.
Thank you, President.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, our next proclamation is significant as well. Sean Dixon and Marty Patterson, if you're here, if you'd like to join me, as well as Councilwoman Hiller. David, my friend, I see you. A certificate of recognition for Brown versus Board of Education. 68 years ago, the landmark case Oliver L. Brown et al. Versus the Board of Education of Topeka et al. Began here in Topeka, Kansas. This case provided revolutionary ideas that compelled the Supreme Court to end segregation in public schools and demonstrated the enduring beliefs of our citizens that all citizens should enjoy freedom, equity, inclusion, and opportunity, and a corresponding belief that all citizens should be free to share their thoughts and opinions and learn from others. Topeka has 2 National Historic Landmarks designated for their significance to the Brown v. Board of Education, U.S. Supreme Court: Monroe Elementary School and Sumner Elementary School, as well as many other sites and stories that reflect that story and experience. Topeka is seen as a global beacon in our nation's and the world's quest toward freedom and equality. We are excited and proud to be an active part of the continued effort to fulfill the vision and promise of the Brown v. Board movement and the 1954 Supreme Court decision yet to be realized. In witness whereof, I do hereby affix my official signature and the official seal of the city of Topeka, Kansas, on the 17th day of May 22. Thank you. Also, I'd like to give Councilwoman Hiller an opportunity to speak. She's a member and has been a very active participant in the Brown v. Board movement and activities, and she'd like to say a few words. And then I believe, Sean, you're going to say something too?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to say just a few words. It's been an honor, a lot of work, and an honor to be involved in recognizing Brown v. Board, not only the case, but the vision, looking back in terms of the stories and making sure we brought the stories out, as well as looking forward to finish that uncompleted agenda. And with me today to give some remarks about how that's going are first Marty Patterson, who is with the Brown v. Board Sumner Legacy Trust Group. Marty is the indefatigable advocate for making sure that the stories of the plaintiff era folks are heard. And she's got just some quick updates for you of new activities for that storytelling and gathering that happened this year. Marty? I'm in charge. You got to go first.
Bless God. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. The Brown v. Board became significant when I volunteered there back in 2014 almost. And noticed that in that Monroe school, there's no mention of Topeka. I don't know why anyone had not noticed it before me, but I was a little upset that such a monumental case did not talk about Topeka, which is at the top of that document, and had done Topeka was the reason that Thurgood Marshall wanted to tell the story of how we can be integrated. And we did very well here in Topeka. The story is really great. We got into the schools this year. We did programs and we do events. But I can't help but think of that young man in Buffalo, if he had learned about the cultures and the inclusiveness that were given in many, many communities, maybe he wouldn't have had that same idea. So being in the schools is very important to me. I've been trying to get in there for quite a few years. I thank Valerie Mendoza because she really got it started last year. When she did it for Topeka High, and she's at Washburn, but she got Topeka High interested. And Sam McCormick, Donald Perkins, and a few others told their story. There were about 729 students, 1954 African-American students, who were in that case. It wasn't just 6 or 13. There were 729 African-American students involved in that case. And a few of them are still living. They're in their 80s and 90s. But their stories are alive and true. What we did after Topeka High, Michael Case over at Highland Park, he had Donald Perkins come in. And the kids were so excited in hearing the stories, they asked Donald to come back. That's just how believable these people are and how great they have become. Susan Garlinghouse over at Collegiate in Burl New, they were instrumental in having Dale Cushenberry come and talk about his experiences of being in segregated schools, how great they had a time, how the teachers were just instrumental in giving them the best education in America. So I wanted to be able to thank those people and help us remember Thurgood Marshall. I had asked the school administrator recently what they think about Thurgood Marshall. And they said, well, was he a principal? Or did he go to one of the schools here? And I said, no.
No, and one of the people who attended that meeting with me was Eugene Williams, that was the general manager over at KTWU, and he just politely said, no, he was the first Supreme Court justice and the lawyer who fought for the 1954 case. So the education is so important, and I'm hoping to we can get into more schools with the people we have left to give their true testimony. I thank you for this time. God bless.
Following her, Sean Dixon from Visit Topeka. We had a huge event related to Brown v. Board this year and have more coming.
Just briefly, because it's hard to follow Marty. Recently I had the opportunity to represent Topeka in the state of Kansas as a board member on the U.S. Civil Rights Trail Marketing Coalition, which is a multi-state coalition designed to raise awareness and to promote our civil rights sites around the country. And in doing that, I really framed to me the importance of the Brown site, the Brown legacy, and what this community, in terms of its presence, means to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, and the precedents that this legal foundation created, not just for civil rights around the country, but really around the world. And that was driven home again for me again last week when President Biden signed the Brown v. Board Expansion Act, which now elevates this site to full status of the Brown v. Board National Park, expands our site by 1 acre, and then adds the other plaintiff sites in multiple states to recognition as part of this. So we're humbled, and we love using this as an anchor to bring people to this community to learn about not only Topeka, but the legacy of Brown and what this means here. But are eager to begin working on the 70th anniversary, which happens in 2 years, as a major tourist attraction for us. So thank you all very much.
I'm going to get that with you, and if you would like a copy, contact my office and we'll give one that to me. We have one? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate your attention for those recognitions, and because it's important that we take the opportunity before we get into business to recognize the good things that are happening in our community. So thank you all for being here today. Now, Madam Clerk, if we will move on to item number 3 on the agenda.
3 is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Angela Boxterman to the Downtown Business Improvement District Advisory Board to fill a term ending May 31, 2024.
Okay, we have an appointment that's been read. Is there a motion from the council? Moved to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, the second by Councilman Emerson. If you'll call the roll vote, please.
Councilmembers Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion's carried. And we will move on now to item number 4 on the agenda, presentations. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. At this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Steve Wade, Finance Director, who will go over the quarterly report for the City of Topeka.
Thank you, Manager. Mr. Mayor, joined up front tonight with Josh McInerney. Josh did work on the Q1 report, which is in your packets. Also did some work for a presentation that we'll make here in a quick second. Josh graduated this weekend, and in between ceremonies, pulled some stuff together. So certainly happy to have Josh up here tonight. On the quarterly report, there's a couple of highlights that I would like to point out. First is the notation that revenues are up compared to budget in 21 Q1, There's a couple reasons for that. The biggest being the fact that when we did some bond refunding in February, that was $15.7 million. That shows up in the quarter one report, so that skews the numbers a little bit. Expenses are basically flat to quarter one. We always watch personnel closely. On a week-to-week basis, we're tracking very basically where we were before, so we do not expect any anomalies at this point in time. I will tell you that commodities with inflation right now are up a little bit, and so that is an area that we're paying very close attention to as we move forward this year. Our diverse vendor spending is something that we've obviously been tracking very closely these last few sessions. You'll note that the vendor awards made as a percentage is just under 27% out of 51 bid events released to the public. We're tracking that. We're trying hard to increase our diverse spending. We had a session a couple Saturdays ago, so that is something that's a focus for our department. Last week we had a conversation, and this is on pages 36 to 38 of your quarterly report. We had a conversation last week in reference to fund balances in utilities. And I'd kind of like to walk through that a little bit, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Please.
You heard some numbers last week, and those numbers, when we talk about fund balances being over $200 million, comes out of the annual report that it should be released for 21 here in a couple of weeks. Those numbers, because utilities is operated under an enterprise fund, the accounting side of that means that we have to account for the equity we have in our assets. And so when we talk about water plants and whatnot, that shows up as in the fund balance. And so when we're talking about $200 some odd million of fund balance, that's not all cash. That's stuff that's on the ground. And so when you take a look at what's actual in cash, it's about $110 million. And so in your packets and on the screen right now, we're looking at water at the moment. So there's just under $47 million of equity pooled cash for water. We're required by bond covenant to have about $7 million on hand. We can't touch it. There's nothing we can do with it. That's because we've got bonds out there. You'll see another $2.5 million in restricted interfund transfers. That gets you to cash on hand of just about $37 million. With that $37 million, $23 million of that is cash and bond. And so there is an itemized list on the screen at the moment and in your packets that equals to that same $23 million. Those are projects that are in process. Those are projects that we're actively spending money on. The total budget on those projects is about $114 million. And you can see that we've spent about $42 million to date with income, revenue and bonds of about $65 million. The point of this being, we're not bonding in advance. We're bonding as we're spending the money. And so we're trying to be very diligent with how we're spending the taxpayer money. When you pull that $23 million out, and again, this is in the water fund, you'll show an unrestricted cash balance of $14 million. So there's $14 million in water. There's $6 million in stormwater. And there's $22 million in wastewater. We talked last week about required reserves as far as the number of days of operational. We're required by city policy to have 180 days. Best practice, as Braxton pointed out last week, is closer to 360. We're sitting right now at about that 250 type mark, depending on how you look at your calculations. We believe that to be a reasonable amount. So what I wanted to tell the council this evening is that we're not sitting on a ton of cash, and we're not bonding a bunch of money in advance. We're actually doing it as we have projects shovel-ready and underway. I'll stand for any questions on the quarter one report, and then I've got a quick one I want to add on the back end of that.
Questions for Mr. Wade? Councilman Dolberg.
Yeah, no questions. Just appreciate the presentation. Mr. Wade, this really spells it out. I mean, you mentioned it last week. It's a lot easier to see it in print here. It is a different animal than the general fund. And when we talk about reserves, we're talking about a lot more than just revenue minus expense. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, I can't tell online, is there anyone with their hand up? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wade. I appreciate your presentation. Being able to see this and with your explanation in detail, it's appreciated. Thank you.
Certainly, that's a lot of hard work by Josh and Nicole Malott, who I think is behind me also. Mr. Mayor, there's one other thing that I wanted to point out, and this was at the request of council. Kalea, who's also in the audience tonight, as our grant writer, you've asked for an update as far as what we're chasing as far as grants, and I've got some data for you. So since January 1, Kalea has assisted in applying for a little more than $154 million of grants. These include SPARK grants, RAISE grants, EPA lead line mediation, U.S. Conference of Mayors, Department of Justice, Mental Health Services. We have four grants underway right now, and she's also been a nice asset of information for not-for-profits in the community, trying to get word out to them as far as there being opportunities in the field. So she's working hard, and we're chasing that money.
Thank you. I appreciate that you bring that to our attention because she's been very active. I've been in a couple meetings with her, and she's been a big asset. So thank you for recognizing her efforts.
Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
I did have a question. Do we have any, or what is the balance left of our CARES Act funds? I was looking at the page and I couldn't decipher it.
So the CARES Act fund is sitting at approximately $200,000.
Okay.
How much? I can.
$200,000, give or take.
Everything else has been actually spent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we get a breakdown of where it all went?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Valdivia-Acala. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for Steve. Good job that Leah is applying herself in the way that she is. Out of the $154 million that have been applied for, do we know how much we have received in grants out of that?
I wish I could tell you $154 million, Councilwoman, but unfortunately, as of right now, we're still waiting on our first big win.
Okay, thank you.
That's good. Any further questions? Again, thank you. Good work. We'll move on to the consent agenda, number 5, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting Yvonne Duncan an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Arab Shrine Temple an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Christina Valdivia Acala granting Christopher Mulford an exception to the provisions of the City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. D is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller approving a special event known as the Topeka Underachievers .5K. E is a resolution introduced by Mayor Michael Padilla granting Valley Park NIN exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. F are minutes of the regular meeting of May 3rd and a regular meeting of May 10, and there's a list of cereal malt beverage license applications. Staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. We've heard the consent agenda. The chair would entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Move to approve by Councilman Dobler. Second by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you will call the roll vote.
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
While I think the underachievers race at half a K is still too far to run, nevertheless, I'll say yes.
and Councilmember Kell.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. Madam Clerk, if you will move on to action items number 6 on the agenda.
6 is approval of general warranty deed between the City of Topeka and the Kansas Department of Transportation for property located at 100 Southwest Van Buren Street, Track 7.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, these comments will be for both A and B. These are conversations that we had over land track 100 Southwest Van Buren and 129 Southwest Van Buren. That's a donation to the Polk Quincy Viaduct project. It does require a vote to pass, and with that, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, any discussion, questions we might have for these two items, A and B?
And they do have to be done separately. They do have to be done separately, but my comments are for both.
Okay.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion to approve action item 6A. Motion to approve from Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilman Dobler. If you'll call the roll vote, please.
Councilmembers Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Kell,
Yes.
and Nager.
Yeah.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion carried. We'll move on to action item 6B. Heard the comments from the city manager. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve from Councilman Dobler, second from Councilman Kell. If you'll call the vote, please.
Okay, we have Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to action item 6C. If the clerk would read.
C is an ordinance introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at 117 Northeast US Highway 24 from C4 Commercial District to PUD Planned Unit Development M2 Multifamily Residential Uses.
Okay, on this item, requires that we have asked for ex parte communications. So prior to proceeding with the vote, each member of the governing body who has engaged in ex parte communication with any individual, either in favor of or against the matter being considered, must state that the communication occurred and indicate that even in light of having engaged in the communication, they were able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based only upon the evidence provided on the record. The record includes the Planning Commission minutes, the staff report and its attachments, the public comments made during the Planning Commission hearing, and similar relevant information relative to the matter. So I ask now for any council members who have had any ex parte communications on this matter. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
I've had emails and phone calls. I did go and visit the site, and I feel that I can be fair and impartial.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anyone further? Councilman Dobler.
I think we all got similar emails, a couple of emails. Looks like a letter tonight, so maybe not ex parte, but at least parte, and I didn't parte back, so I feel like I can be objective. Thank you.
Okay.
Same, Mayor.
Okay. Further?
I got the same and met the owners this evening. They're here this evening, but
Okay.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Councilman Ortiz?
Ditto.
Okay. I too have had an opportunity to visit with the petitioners and feel that I can make a decision fairly and impartially. So,
Same here.
I didn't see you over there. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Hannah's.
And Councilwoman Nager, and Councilman Lesser, and Councilman Kell. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, did you have something more to add?
Yes, I do. There's two things that I want to address specifically. First, I just want to give my take on the PUD in general with the way that it's come forth from the Planning Commission. And there are a few things I want to touch base on with this, so bear with me, and then I'll go into the second point. There is, because of the nature of this particular type of housing and the intentions that the developers have with going into this, it has come across the line in many ways as this being particular for the homeless population and folks that may be moving out of the Topeka Rescue Mission into, what is the definite need for more affordable housing. So with that said, I'm going to address that particular point about the homeless and the chronic unsheltered. While certainly Topeka has an issue with the homeless and chronic unsheltered, these issues are very specific to North Topeka and specific also to the area of North Topeka East that continue to deal with the challenging situations that they are in as far as the unsheltered and homeless, whether this be the rescue mission, whether this be the Noto Arts District, the North Topeka East residential neighborhoods, et cetera. I will say that there were no neighborhood property owners, to my understanding, that showed up to counter this zoning change at the initial property owner meeting. The Planning Commission meeting itself, which took place on April 18, had no public comment against the zoning change. There was a very hearty, healthy, deep discussion on it since I went over the meeting a couple of different times. Yet now, what we are looking at in the 12th hours have been some calls today from some business owners concerned with, and these are my words, I will say it, these are my words, what I consider a NIMBY mindset being not in my backyard. We already know that this area of Highway 24 has seen definite improvements, and that has been great to see. However, there are still boarded up structures in the area, along with a mobile home park that is greatly greatly diminished, and the owners appear, having gone into that area multiple times myself and tried to deal with a number of situations, the owners of this mobile home park do not appear to be intent on fixing things up. This particular mobile home park, which is catty-corner to the area that we're talking about, is lived in by mostly elder and the poorest of the poor on fixed incomes. And yet, to my understanding, I've never heard anything about wanting to perhaps look more deeply into these issues where there is definitely human suffering going on. So we know that the Planning Commission passed this 9-0, right? We know that affordable housing is needed, and we know that this is possibly one answer to what I believe the conscientious owners are trying to address. They will be the ones maintaining the property, and they care deeply, from what I have been able to see and hear from other organizations, about the crisis we are in. We also know that Topeka Community Foundation is in league in helping them with this housing initiative. And they also have a support of a number of different social service organizations. We also know that the issue of the chronic unsheltered and the impact this is having on all of us at this point in time, which is why I've continued to bring up the Built for Zero initiative. If somewhere down the road, the city council wants to seriously address the Built for Zero initiative, we are going to run into cases possibly of more NIMBY, since Built for Zero and any real issue that is, or any real policy that's going to address this issue takes a housing first approach. And so I also wanted to say that as an added component in that is these particular blocks of housing units cannot be, from what I understand, reserved only for the unsheltered or the homeless. So in other words, we know that about a third of the city is struggling with finding affordable housing. Lower income folks may transfer from where they're currently housed at to whatever phases this goes into, phase 1, 2, or 3, whatever's available, they might end up transferring into these new housing units. So the whole thing about this is going to be homeless only or chronic unsheltered only is not necessarily true. The other thing, though, that I did want to point out, and I talked with the city attorney today, and I watched the meeting again a couple of different times, is that there had been some concern about the parking variance. I will admit the parking variance I did not get when I initially watched the meeting. My understanding was there were going to be 75 apartment units, and they were designating 65 spots. So basic subtraction would be there were 10 that they were going to be short. Okay, well, not a big deal. Well, after speaking to the city attorney about it more thoroughly, my understanding, and I don't know if Bill Fyander is there to come and verify this, is that based on the code, there are 123 spots required per code without the variance that has been written into this. 123 is a huge amount, and I was really shocked by that. And I don't know if, we need to have more discussion about this. I want to say that I am in support of this wholeheartedly, except I do have some concerns about the parking issue. So there you have it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we proceed, we do have some voting options on this particular item. One, we can approve the Planning Commission's recommendations, and 6 votes are required of the governing body to do that. We can reject or amend the Planning Commission's recommendation. 7 votes are required of the governing body. Or third, remand back to Planning Commission. 6 votes are required of the governing body. if we can entertain a motion, and then if we can, then if there's further discussion before we have that vote, the chair will entertain a motion.
To approve the planning commission's recommendation.
Okay? Motion to approve the planning commission's recommendation by Councilman Kell. Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala, did you have your hand up?
Okay, I wasn't sure what we're doing right now, because I wanted to ask Bill Fiander about the 123 parking spaces.
We're moving on a motion, asking for a second, and then we'll have further discussion.
Got it. I'll second.
Okay? A second by Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala. If you will call, and now for discussion. Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala, you had a question about the parking. Mr. Fiander is approaching the podium.
Good evening, everybody. To answer Councilwoman's question, the parking, there is a variance in the PUD for parking. The code normally would require for this many number of units. She was correct. It's in the 120, 125 range. That is basically a space for the first 20, and then two spaces for the first 20 and a space and a half for the remainder, because there's under 800 square feet. Without confusing the matter anything more than that, I will just say the site itself accommodates 65 units. The site plan that you have in your packet, in the PUD, accommodates 65 units. There are 65 spaces. Because that number, the size of the units are such, you're completely expecting to have one person or at the most two, certainly one household for that size of a unit. Given the intent of the project, you're also expecting not everybody to have a car or need a car. You're on within short walking distance to a bus stop. We have done variances before for PUDs, most recently for affordable housing projects, most recently the Casson development at 6th and Topeka, which was the same type of situation where we lowered those parking standards for those very same reasons I just stated. So I would say look, our code is pretty parking heavy. So our requirements are, in fact, we're looking at reducing those requirements with the Planning Commission for residential as we speak this year. So we are very comfortable with those recommendations for the variance, and I just want to get that out and see if you have any questions beyond that.
Councilwoman, you have a follow-up?
I do. Thank you for that, Bill. Let me just break this down a little bit. So what you're basing it on, the code now says 123, but that would be based on what type of housing that is different than what we're looking at now?
Councilwoman, the parking code would assume, and this was developed, again, years ago, that there would be a large apartment unit, multiple bedrooms, but it does not get into, it's not so fine grain that it's based on the unit size or the number of bedrooms. So it's very, what's the word? It's very accommodating or open to erring on the side of too much parking. Let's put it that way. So when you get smaller units, or you get a type of project that doesn't have that sort of demand for vehicles, our code doesn't really recognize that. It doesn't. So that's why there's actually a number of administrative variances that we have to lower that. Here, in this case, we feel very comfortable that given the number of units, or I shouldn't say the number, the size of the units, the intent of the project, the facilities that are nearby, that that parking ratio that is in the PUD is appropriate.
Okay, and so in a nutshell, because these are smaller units, because they're only going to be one, like you said, maybe two at the most, because the particular population that this may draw in, whether that be homeless or whether that just be, lower income folks that may be coming from one area of town and wanting to move over here because the price differential may be more affordable to them, it's still based on those that it is anticipated to serve. Is that correct? That's what you're kind of in the space, the space of each unit.
I would say the biggest factor is the size of the unit to start with, that you're only looking at pretty much at one at the most car per unit. And then to hedge, yes, you look at the client, the customers that would be there, and the fact that the program is set to have people with fewer need for a car in that case, and that you have a transit facility nearby as well is also another factor to hedge here.
And to talk about the transit facility, I think that I did hear in the Planning Commission meeting that there is going to be a pedestrian connection. Can you give me a better interpretation of a layman's terminology of pedestrian connection that will hook them up to the bus stop at Highway 24 in Kansas?
Yes, I'd be happy to. There is a bus stop on both sides of Kansas Avenue just north of Elm Row, which is about 500 feet from the Highway 24 Kansas Avenue intersection. So about 500, 600 feet from this property. The staff had recommended a pedestrian connection from the property to Kansas Avenue, because this property is about one property in from Kansas Avenue. They show that on their site plan. I further understand that instead of relying on asking neighbors to have them put that through their property, they have actually purchased property that connects to Kansas Avenue. So they'll be able, the owners will be able to put that in on their own land and connect to Kansas Avenue at the time of new construction. That would be a requirement as when they come back and do new construction. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, and I think one, maybe two more questions. When you're looking at this type of going from 123, spots to now 65 units and the number of spots that we're going into now that has this type of variance, how often is this done, this particular type of variance with parking spaces done in the work that you all do when we're talking about rezoning issues?
Great question. As I indicated, the most recent one that you might be aware was that was straight zoning, but there'll be a PUD coming back to you for the, or there was a PUD for, I should say, there was a PUD for Casson at 6th and Topeka that we did this with, and that normally if you're on a bus line or in a corridor, bus route corridor, and you have some tight, let's say, site, and you have some sharing of parking, even potentially, or on-street parking. In this case, we do that I shouldn't say quite a bit, but more often than not. Just because we're trying to be, I don't know if people realize the cost of a parking space adds about $150 to the monthly rent. And so it's really an affordability issue with when you require additional parking that you really don't need. So we do try and look at that. We have some administrative allowances to do maybe like 25% less of the requirement. But in this case, as you noted, it's quite a bit. So that's why the PUD is necessary here. Yeah, I don't think this is unusual. In fact, I think you'll have another PUD with an affordable workforce housing development coming to you in a few months that will probably be proposing the same sort of thing. And if nothing else, we don't want to overpark our sites. It adds to cost, and it adds to projects not being able to be viable.
And then one more question, Bill. Is there any possibility in the future the code could be amended to, you said you were possibly re-looking at it?
Yeah.
Especially as we think of new ways for affordable housing and how cost burdened so many folks are, in Topeka with housing costs.
Councilwoman, absolutely. We have started what we call a missing middle code amendment process with our planning commission, and one of those elements to try and get more anywhere from 2-family to 20-unit type developments in our city. How can we change our codes? Parking is one of those, to allow more sites to be eligible for that type of housing and to lower the cost of that development. And we'll get a bigger pool of contractors involved to build that at that scale. So we are starting that, and I hope to get something to you by the end of the year would be my ideal hope.
Okay, thank you, Bill, for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. So I do have a slight concern about parking from this perspective. I don't have an issue with the variance. It's not a one-to-one, though. It's a 75-unit development. It's 65 parking spots. I'm assuming some of those will be dedicated at some point for staff, maintenance, coming and going, reserved spots, maybe 1 or 2. I don't know what the handicapped disability requirements are. So I guess my only concern with the variance, and I don't know how much it was discussed in the meeting, I've gone through the minutes, is that we're not at least requiring a one-to-one, a very direct one-to-one ratio. And I understand all the issues of maybe they don't have vehicles, but you get one who does, you get a couple who do have 2 vehicles, you get staff using some, and suddenly that 65 goes away real fast. So I guess, was there much discussion about at least, or concern from your department, at least keeping it one-to-one in some of these cases?
Deputy Mayor, I looked into this a little more before tonight, and you have this information in the packet, the site cannot handle any more than 65 units. We may have, it may say 75 on there, but if you look at the site plan and add up the units, it's 65 units. So the one-for-one is being accommodated realistically, and if it can't be, then it would have to be amended. There's also a provision for 10 bicycle parking spots as well, which is part of the count. So I think in reality, yes, you have a one-to-one ratio with the site plan that is in the PUD.
Okay, well, then you just said something, I guess, Father. Why are we approving a 75-unit development if we've looked at it and said there's no way we can cram 75 units into that space? And I recognize that when they get to, and this is not an indictment of the developer, okay, this is a more general, but I mean, then in theory, wouldn't they then be able to sort of try to make an effort to add those 2 units? And if we come back and say, that's awful, we've already said, doesn't matter, you've let us build 10 units that we didn't think could be built in the first place?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the bottom line is they have maxed out between the setbacks, the detention, and the parking. There is nowhere else to go here unless you want to build 300 square foot units, which you really can't. Our code is at a minimum about a 400 square foot for building code purposes. So it is really maxed out. I think where some of that came off as being more than they needed was there is an existing structure right now, 15 units that is on the site right now. The idea is to keep that and phase in the new construction, but not kick people out until they have the new units built. So there might be, at some point, you might technically may have more than 65, but because you're transferring people out from the old unit that they're going to tear down into the new units. So that's the only oddity about this, but 65 is, I'm very confident that is what this site plan, that is what you're approving realistically tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Finder, I guess, I mean, I have exactly the same concern. I would like, at least a one-to-one, because if not, what do? Someone rents and you say, well, sorry, you can't park here. But if what you're saying is correct, then this document we have in here is not correct, because it shows 75. It shows 10, 12, 12, 24, and 17, which if my math is right, is 75 units. So is this not correct?
There,
And these are new. It's 17 and 24 Phase 1 units, which, I didn't add those specifically separately, but that's what, 37 times. Mr. Engineer, 41?
yeah, I've got 31 and 35. Or, I'm sorry, 31 and 34.
Would be 69.
Phase 1, 31 new units. For Phase 2, there'd be 34 new units.
That's 41 new units in Phase 1, correct? 17 and 24?
In Phase 1.
So this is page 192 of our whole packet. It shows a nice big site plan with the retention pond in the middle.
Okay.
And so what it's showing, it's also showing, so you have 41 units in your first phase, and then you have 28 spaces to accommodate those 41
Right.
units.
That was correct.
And again, I mean, I'll just tell you where I am on this. I am for this project. These are the kinds of things we need, but if we approve something that doesn't even have parking for the people in there, I can just see it's going to be, unless you're going to tell people they can't have a car there. I did read through the thing today, and it seems like there's a lot of, like, you can't discriminate against, you can't reserve, you can't discriminate. So I don't know, what do they do? Someone comes in and, well, if you have a car, you can't live here.
Councilman Emerson, I know we've gone through this at Casson when they were doing their development. And that is a reality when they do the lease, that you may or may not have guaranteed parking for your guests, for your visitors. There's on-street parking. So we would expect the same thing to happen here. Not everyone is going to be guaranteed a spot because there won't be the need. Not everybody will have a need for a car, and then there also, you have occupancy. It's not usually 100% occupied typically. So that is how we get to, and then we have the bike parking, which we expect that will be part of it. You've got transit. So we think we're very clear with this is an acceptable ratio for this type of development and where it's at. Excuse me.
Boy, it's a stretch for me, because I just don't know how as the deputy mayor said, there are going to be some people who will have two vehicles. And this is going to turn into a police problem, not speak of police, but I can just see this has disaster written all over, with people fighting and over who can park there, who can't. I will tell you, unless it's a one-to-one, frankly, I'm a no vote on this, as much as I like the concept. But if they can figure out a way to get 10 more spots, then that's a yes. I like everything else about this. I just don't know how this is so far from the norm, Like you said, I think a lot of places, if this was a commercial thing, they'd have, well, I guess the 123 that the councilwoman, golly, I just can't. I guess my judgment saying you need at least one-to-one is what I'd feel comfortable with. I may be the only one. Anyway, thank you.
Councilwoman Nager, and Councilwoman Hiller, and Councilman Lesser, and then Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you so much for your presentation and thank you for the work on this. Since we're looking at really moving people into affordable housing, whether it's moving them out of unsuitable affordable, what used to be affordable housing, or getting people housed, I'm more interested in finding out how close is this to the closest metro route? Because if we're talking about people who are getting their feet underneath them and they're trying to just get into housing, then a car is maybe not something that they already have. You talked about the bike parking. How close are we to the Topeka Metro?
Councilwoman, there is a bus stop within, I would say, 600 feet of the property. So it's just on Kansas Avenue, a couple properties south of this.
Okay. And so how long of a walk would you call that? Like 5 minutes?
Oh, it's, yeah, 5 minutes is a quarter mile. Yeah, this is 2.5 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. I know for me, trying to get people into housing and making sure that these areas are available, that's more important to me than a 1-to-1 ratio. I've also lived places where you were not guaranteed parking. If we're trying to create a new place for people to land, I don't know why we would hold it up with getting a ratio exactly 1-to-1. I think making sure that we're moving forward with these projects is more important to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the work that's done and want to support the proposal as it's been proposed. I want to suggest that it's been clear that the intent, and I appreciate that this is private owners who are developing this privately as well. It's wonderful to see happening in our community. But when you're targeting people who are on SSI, who are very, very low income and living alone, they're living on $700 a month or less. It's not common to have a vehicle because you can't afford to buy it and you can't afford to maintain it. The beauty of this site, and so to have a sea of empty parking spaces is kind of discouraging to live in, actually. If you think about it, if you go to Jackson Tower, which is 100 units, there's probably 18 people that have cars. They've got a little bitty parking lot right next to it. If you're in and out of there are a handful of people that have vehicles, but not many. If you go to Polk and Tyler, which are also high-rises in this case, I'm just using examples, but there's a parking lot a square parking lot on the corner between the two that easily houses the 15 or so cars that people have. That at that income level, which they are targeting to house, people don't often have vehicles. And a beauty of this site, which we haven't talked about, besides being right on the bus route, is that it's walkable from the Dillons. It's on Highway 24. It's like 3 blocks away, Bill, maybe?
Roughly, yes.
And those good sidewalks and development there. So it's one of the things you look for people to be able to survive and thrive is those amenities as well. And that Highway 24 corridor has been popping up with some really great refreshed development there too. Very accessible there with the bus line right there to get Kansas Avenue, get downtown, get all over town to amenities and services that they need. So I appreciate how much it's been thought through. Again, oversizing a parking space where you're not likely to have that many vehicles is really discouraging and just maintenance. So it looks to me like it's been well-sized and well done, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just struggle with not even having a 1-to-1 ratio. It seems I support I support this project, wholeheartedly, fundamentally. I have heard nothing but positive comments about the developers. But I do struggle with the lack of just a one-to-one ratio, especially as the intent is to try to improve the individuals who, the lifestyles and the economic position that these people are in. So I really do struggle without at least a one-to-one ratio. That really does bother me. None of us can sit here and say that everybody isn't going to have a car, and nobody can sit here and say everybody isn't going to have a car. I just, that I really struggle with. And then fundamentally, I struggle with the fact of as much as I do support these specific developers in this project, I have to feel every time in listening to the different discussions, we're doing whatever we can do to make this fit versus in many other situations, I just feel like we've done just the opposite, and it kind of goes both ways. So I'm really struggling. I wish there was a way this could be reworked so there was at least a one-to-one ratio, and then this would be really easy for me. But I mean, you can give me all the data you want. You can tell me, all the things that everybody thinks. But what I do know is we don't have one spot to every apartment, and that's troublesome to me. So that's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala, then Councilman Kell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I think that Councilwoman Hiller came up with some great points. When you're talking, I can remember working for the VA, which I'm always going to bring up, and dealing with veterans on fixed incomes, and if they had anything like offsets, because of VA medical bills or something, they would end up on $750 a month to live on. And so I can tell you that there were a number without cars, because you end up hearing a lot of stories. I don't think the one-to-one ratio at this point, after listening to Director Fyander, is a breaking point for me. I think, again, I do not want to mix up, and I don't want to mince words in that. Well, initially I had those questions about it. I also know on the other side of this is there are definitely people in that area that do not want it there because of what they believe that it means, that they perceive will happen there. And this is something we have to get a handle on. This is something new. This is something, to me, slightly innovative. So, I'm in support with it as it stands. Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Councilman Kell.
Just kind of like Councilwoman Nager said earlier, I've lived in 3 apartment complexes. All 3 didn't have, I'm trying to look at the word now, guaranteed spots. And in all 3 of those, there were people that did not drive. And so, and just like in one of the apartment complexes here in town was income-based. So you had a lot of people that are on Social Security that just barely got over the line, but also didn't have vehicles. And this is actually a way also of some of those people to be able to connect with their neighbors in these aspects. I've seen many times where you'll have the neighbors that will take care of their neighbors that don't have a car, can't afford a car, can't drive because of ability or age or eyesight. So this is sometimes a good way of bringing people together in a group to take care of each other. I know it's kind of a roundabout way of saying that we shouldn't require this just be for a one-to-one just to make it work. but I'm pretty sure that you're only maybe going to get 50% of the occupants having vehicles in this scenario.
Are you done, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bill, did you have something to add?
I may, just to offer this up, by the way, you're all correct. I'm wrong. Yeah, there's 75 units. Yeah, it's that, advanced degree stuff. Yeah, exactly. Don't tell anybody.
On New Jersey.
Good Jersey.
I do believe in questions and the discussion here that the developer would be amenable to a 1-to-1 ratio, which means lower the 75 to 65. So if that's something that the body wants to entertain tonight without remanding it back to the planning commission, I think you have on good faith here that is a viable solution to everything. So I'll step back.
Thank you. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and the Deputy Mayor.
I did not understand that. Can you please go over that?
Sure, real simple. The proposal tonight is for 75 units PUD to help get to where everybody's on the same page. The developer would agree to 65 units instead of 75 units. And then that way you have your 1-to-1 parking.
Okay, I understand that now.
Okay.
Okay, and that could be done without it having to go back to the planning commission?
Go ahead.
Correct. One of the options today is that the governing body can amend the planning commission's recommendation by amending the ordinance. It does require 7 votes in order to do that.
Okay, thank you for that, city attorney. Mayor, since I know you still have others that are going to speak, but I'm just saying that since Director Finder is stating that that would be amenable to the developer, then, that's something that I could stand behind as well and support and put forth the motion on when it's time.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, Councilman Dobler, and then Councilman Kell.
Thank you, Mayor. So when I disappeared, that was my question of staff, to make sure if we went through the process and what was more amenable to everybody. Obviously, if we remanded back, the planning wouldn't meet for another month, which means we wouldn't have this back to us till July. It sounds like, which my question to staff was, could we just amend this to 65 since there was also some issues there? The answer seems to be yes, so I guess I would make a substitute motion to amend this to 65 planned unit development, which would require 7 votes, so we don't have to send it back. Thank you, Mayor.
Did I not say I would do that?
Gotta say, I move.
You're the second.
Yeah. Now, we have a motion on the floor right now, and now you're offering an amendment to 65. Councilman Kell's motion is the one you're amending.
He offered a substitute motion.
A substitute, okay.
And that's in essence what I was going to do, so.
Okay. Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor, and I may actually offer a friendly amendment here. I believe there's, without going into a lot of architectural engineering, there's probably a way to get perhaps 70 out of this by reworking the building. So I wonder if it'd be a better motion to require a 1-to-1 parking per apartment. That way, if they could get 68 apartments and 68 parking places, because I'm sure there's some break even where they need to get, the more apartments they can rent, the more likely that this will be a success. So I guess I'd make a friendly amendment that's a 1-to-1 ratio, not to exceed 75.
Sold.
Okay. I want to make sure here,
I believe the substitute motion is to amend the ordinance to between 65 and 75, provided there's a 1-to-1 ratio of parking in apartments.
Okay, so, but the original motion was to, now this is substitute, so it supersedes Mr. Kell's original motion.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so we have a substitute motion before us. Do you have a second? Second from Councilman Kell. All right. Any further discussion? If you
I
call.
do.
Okay, Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Okay, so obviously what I said was negated, and y'all went on without me, so I want to know exactly where we're at and where Councilman Dobler's friendly amendment is in this whole thing.
Okay.
Please explain.
Would you restate the motion, please?
The current motion on the floor is to amend the ordinance in front of you to require between 65 and 75 units, provided there's a 1-to-1 ratio of parking to unit.
Do you need
And that includes, that verbiage that city attorney just stated brought in Councilman Dobler's part of it as well with the 1-to-1.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we all clear? Do we need the motion to repeat it again? Okay. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll vote? And this is to approve Councilman Dobler's motion.
Okay, council members Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Motion carried. And I want to thank council for asking the questions that they did, because it sounded like everybody supported this idea and the actions of the developers. And I think that's great. But looking a little bit into the details, I wanted to make sure that they are clear what our hopes and expectations are for their development. And again, I thank you for your work in this area.
I apologize. We do need one more vote. That was a vote on the substitute motion. Now we need to vote on it all together.
Okay.
Oh, I thought
Good
that was
catch,
it.
Ms.
Okay.
Emerson.
So it's testing all of us. If you call the roll vote, please.
All right, Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. If we'll move on to action item 6D. Oh, I might take an opportunity. The developers are in the room right now. If I can ask you to stand so we can recognize you and congratulate you. Thank you. If the Madam Clerk would read 6D, please.
D is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran in accordance with section 1860-010 of the Topeka Municipal Code, approving a conditional use permit to rebuild an existing 672 square foot billboard onto an updated monopole structure approximately 40 feet to the west of its current location on property located on the north side of Southwest 29th Street, approximately 325 feet east of Southwest Gage Boulevard.
Okay, and on 6D as well, this requires that council reveal any ex parte communications with regards to this item. So I need to read this. Prior to proceeding with the vote, each member of the governing body who has engaged in ex parte communication with any individual either in favor of or against the matter being considered must state that that communication occurred and indicate that even though in light of having engaged in that communication, they are able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based only upon the evidence provided on the record. The record includes the Planning Commission minutes, the staff report, and its attachments, the public comments made during the Planning Commission hearing, and similar relevant information related to the matter. So I'm asking council members if they have to reveal any ex parte communications that they have had on item 6D. Are there any to bring forth? Okay. Seeing none, we have the same option on this particular item Our options are: 1, to approve the planning commission's recommendation, reject or amend the planning commission's recommendation, or remand back to the planning commission. So we've heard the resolution. The chair will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the plan as is.
Motion to accept by Councilwoman Nager.
Second.
Second by Councilman Emerson. If you will call the vote.
Okay, Councilmember Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Alcala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
and Mayor Padilla.
Yes,
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
thank you. Move on with the agenda action item E. If the clerk would read, please.
E is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran declaring the necessity to repair, alter, reconstruct, enlarge, or improve the city's water pollution control, and/or stormwater utility system through improvement projects authorized by the resolution and providing notice of intent, authorizing the issuance of revenue bonds in the manner required by KSA 102101 at SEEK.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, if you remember, we had this discussion last week. It was deferred to this week for approval. I know there's been a series of meetings with certain council members. More information's been provided. I do have Mr. Steve Wade, Finance Director, here available to answer any additional questions that may occur or arise. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Mayor.
We have signed up for 6E for public comment, Mr. Joseph Ledbetter. Joe?
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor and governing body. I just sent you an email of some concerns I have about this, because I know you can go long and go past 4 minutes real quick, so I said, well, I'll give you something to read. I'm going to hand this out as well. What I'm placing in the records, what I sent earlier and also last week, is a city document sent to me showing what your reserves are in utilities. And it totals about $240 million. Now, no matter how it's explained away, it's their document. And what bothers me is I was given this 2 months ago, and I never had any further explanation saying it's less, that's wrong, whatever. Now, even if it is less, according to some accounting, procedure, what bothers me as much as anything about this bond issue is the 600 or the 6 million plus for water line replacements, which were promised to us under the higher, newer rate increase of about 2 years ago that went up at 7.5% a year. And that is a huge amount of money. I would like to see that actual dollar, and I may core that, not tonight, but another night, because I feel like we're not getting the oversight that we really need as a community and, use board members. But me as a ratepayer, I feel very uncomfortable with these continuous requests for more and more revenue bonds. Today, I was given another amount, which you probably don't have, that are revenue bonds as of the end of the year. The debt is now $313 million. Last week, I thought it was $250,000 or $250 million. So that was a number I'd been given a while back. And this isn't an attempt to pick on anybody or say, could we do better? Could we be more transparent? Could we have better oversight of what we're doing? This is a huge budget, folks. This is 10 times the Transit Authority's budget. It's about $100 million a year. It's about the size of the county budget. And for the last several years, I personally have felt like we do not have good oversight of this part of our organization. And I don't have time to go into all the examples, but I could tell you, some of the consulting contracts and some of the other things I've seen come out of this department are shocking to me. Because it doesn't show an attempt to be frugal with our money. It doesn't show an attempt to save our money. It doesn't show an attempt to slow down these rate increases, but just continue to charge and charge and charge. And there's a lot of people paying these rates. There's homeowners, there's families with kids, there's elderly, there's people on fixed income, there's small business. Yeah, I've got some friends that own microbreweries. They use a lot of water. And, you know, there's restaurants, all kinds of businesses that use a lot of water. And this does affect us and our cost of living. You know, it's inflationary, okay? There's a good word. Well, it's a bad word, but anyway, it's reality. And we need to slow this down. So, all right. I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal. I will give up my public comments if you'll give me 2 more minutes.
So moved.
A motion by Councilman Emerson and a second by Councilwoman Ortiz. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 2 minutes, sir.
Go that fast.
Good deal.
So, I've watched a few TV shows, games. Anyway, so I have also thrown out some new ideas. I just had this meeting today with our esteemed interim manager and other staff, and I said, look, I am so fed up that we do not have what I feel is good oversight of this part of the organization, that I'm going to propose some ideas. So the first one, and I've embedded it in my email, is I want to see monthly reports to the council, the mayor, and the public of exactly what we owe and who to, revenue bonds, geo bonds, temp notes. I want it all. And I want it by department. And it can be on one page. Folks, we have got to get control of this debt, and we can't do it if we don't know what we owe. Number 2, and I just thought of this today, so I don't have it all worked out, but Parks and Rec has a very excellent advisory council board. And these people look at projects, we advise, I'm on it, and we advise, we talk about needs, we talk about, you know, the budgets, we talk about projects, and we pass on those ideas to the board of directors of the county, and as well as the director and his staff. And I would like to see an advisory board set up that the council and the mayor can appoint. You know, each of you have a vote. Maybe you could have a few extra, but these need to be ratepayers, people that are actually paying these rates. Put a mix of some small business people in there, some homeowners, some elderly, but we need to talk about what's going on in utilities and these rate increases, these the bond indebtedness, et cetera. So I do stand opposed to this, but I definitely am going to throw out some ideas on how to potentially fix some of the problems and the disconnect of communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, it was at my request we pushed this back a week from last week. I want to thank staff for working with me this last week, having some meetings, providing me some information, digging into some numbers and data and all that exciting stuff, budget stuff with me to sort of alleviate some of my concerns. I will continue, and this continues to be our lively discussion with staff, but at some point, I do think we as a governing body in association and cooperation with staff need to have a better understanding of if it's 180 days, it needs to be 180 days. If we need to move that line to 220, fine, but let's understand that so that we both know that we're working from the same playbook And so then, as I said to staff, then I don't look at these big numbers and say, what, that was bigger than I thought. And they've done a great job of walking me through some of that and why we're doing it. And a lot of it makes sense, but that's the only point. And we'll have that discussion again as we get to our own reserve fund here in our general budget. I know, I bring it up all the time. So, but other than that, I just wanted to thank staff for all their work and providing me a lot of other information and sitting down with me this week. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Dobler?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wade, there was a reference to an increase in revenue debt. Would you mind addressing that?
Sure. If you recall last fall, we actually paid off our SRF loans at a substantial savings to the city. That payoff is why there's an increase on the revenue debt. We basically refinanced it at a much lower percentage rate.
So those were old outstanding SRF loans at a higher interest rate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. On this resolution, we've heard comment and question. The chair would entertain a motion from the body.
Move approval.
I have a motion to approve by Councilman Dobler.
Second.
Second by Councilman Emerson. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Council members Valdivia Akla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Motion being carried, and we'll move on to action item 6F, if the clerk would read.
F is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Neil Dobler to resume metered parking on certain downtown streets.
The city manager.
Mayor, governing body, this has been brought back onto the agenda. At this point, I believe Councilman Dobler has some comments, and at this point, if you're good, I will turn it over to him.
Okay. Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. As you recall, when we encountered this resolution the last time, the intent was to do an RFP for the garages, revisit the parking plan, do a lot of things in 3 months, and that proved not to be enough time. No fault to anybody, just a lot to get our arms around. I would propose at this point to kick this off another 2 months to the 3rd meeting in August, whatever that date is. I believe, city manager, at that point, we should be at a better place to discuss all of this, because it is a parking garages, on-street parking, bagged meters, everything has to play in unison to make this enterprise fund solvent, and we need to discuss that. I believe there is going to be a meeting in the next week or so for more robust discussion. So at this point, I'd make a motion to
August 16th is the date.
to send this to the August 16th meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Kell. Further discussion? Okay.
Question.
Councilman Hiller.
So this is, the price tag on that, if I recall, was $25,000 before? Something like that, or the loss? I don't know what that is. Okay. Well, I'm certainly committed to doing everything that we can. When I made the comments that I did last time about getting all the information out, my thought behind that, if it wasn't clear, was to do it as soon as possible so that we could come up with our long-term solutions. And so hopefully it won't take us 3 months, but I can support that as long as everybody's on board with getting to work on this.
Okay. Further comments? Discussion? If you will call the roll.
Council members Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia Aqua.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Motion carried. I want to ask the city attorney, is this the appropriate place, or do I make it?
Now would be an appropriate time to do whatever you would like to do, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. To help facilitate discussion, and maybe to answer Councilwoman Hiller's, hope it doesn't take 3 months, I am going to convene a special meeting of this body, the governing body, on Saturday, June the 4th, from 9 to 11, so that we can discuss this topic, focused, and this topic only. I believe that it'll be held at the Holiday Building, so give us an opportunity to meet and discuss this. So this is my announcement on convening a special meeting on June the 4th from 9 to 11 a.m. Okay? We will move on now to public comment. And for public comment, I have listed Shay Mecca Sims.
Shamika.
Ma'am.
Good evening, everyone.
Ma'am, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Shamika.
Shamika.
Like
Thank you.
Topeka.
Shamika Topeka?
If that helps.
I like that. Okay.
It
Shamika
works.
from Topeka, I like that.
So I won't waste too much time tonight because I tend to overtalk. But I do want to express, these are my opinions, but they are informed by my experiences as a community member. So we had an NIA meeting with Historic Old Town recently, and a question came up with one of the residents about a house that was raised. And our city code compliance didn't have an answer, and we could have let it go, but I was really kind of curious about it too. And so I followed up with my council person, which is Karen Hiller, who was awesome in pointing me to the right direction. After going through the state trying to find the LLC and the address of who owns the property and the phone number of how to get a hold of the person, and then double backed into the city planning department in order to find out the exact name and number of the person on the ground who asked for this house to be demolished. Long story short, we found out that it's part of a larger project, and out of respect for the developer, I won't go into details, but this was a project, or the idea of the project was something that really should have been talked about with the residents, and it never came up until one of our residents had the courage to ask the question. And so when I looked at the permit application, I noticed that there is a question that asks, is this structure near or as listed as a historical site, which it isn't, but there was nothing about the application that asks, is this in a LMI community? Have residents via NIA or NAs been asked to provide insight and some sort of guidance on how to develop this project properly, and there isn't. And so my ask tonight is that the city helps neighborhoods come up with a way to start communication with developers sooner, so that we're not waking up to houses that are just gone, so that we're not having residents just moving out and into inadequate housing situations out of the neighborhood altogether, so we keep our residents. That's the idea. This could be done in a myriad of ways. I imagine part of it could be through city planning. I don't believe that City Works, from what I remember, has a special listing where NIAs can be contacted to let them know what's going on in their neighborhood. But this is a hole that should be filled. There's no reason why in 2022 residents shouldn't be able to come to developers and ask questions before something gets started, as opposed to as the process is starting. This gives us an opportunity to get our residents prepared for change. It prepares us for the asks that we need to come to the table with when we're talking to the developers. I'm so sorry. I'm super nervous. I'm not crying. I'm not emotional. But this is really an important conversation that we need to have. So however that way needs to start, I think more neighborhoods would be on board with it if we know that the option is there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments, Shamika. from Topeka.
Topeka.
Good. Okay, good. Okay, next we have Patrick Kennedy. Is he present? No? Okay. Mr. Kennedy? No. Okay, we'll move on from public comment to announcements. If the clerk
Mr. Mayor,
would-
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Lesser.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. We went kind of quick after the announcement of the June 4th meeting, kind of straight into public comment. I did have a question to see if there was a possibility that we could do a poll or figure out what the all council availability was for that. I will not be able to make it the 4th. I have a commitment that I've had for over a year then, and if not, so be it. But if there is a possibility of a poll of a time when everybody could make it, that would be fine. If not, I understand your position, because I do agree we need to have we do need to have this, but not that you need me, but I will not be able to be there on the 4th.
Thank you, Councilman. Choosing June 4th was giving some consideration to the end of May already being busy, the 24th, 31st being still part of the holidays where people may still be gone or coming back. June 4th looked like the first opportunity that we could get, not waiting for an empty Tuesday in the month of June. Certainly, I'm open to suggestions, but if we're going to do that, I would ask council members to not delay and give available dates to my office no later than the end of this week, so we can set us another date, if not June the 4th, but I want it in June, and I don't want to delay it any further than that. So thank you, Councilman, and I ask governing body members to submit alternate dates before by the end of business on Friday, so we can move forward with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Okay. We'll move forward with the announcement, if the clerk would read.
We have no meeting next week.
Hey. That's a good one.
You're welcome.
Could you repeat? Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, a couple things. City of Topeka, TSC Get Digital, just some updates on that. So far, we've given away more than 200 computers. We have nearly 1,000 left. We'd like to encourage people to contact us if you're eligible, and part of that eligibility is over 60 years of age. And they can call 785-368-3098. But that program's is very successful and having a lot of success. The other thing is Habitat for Humanity currently is funding to help citizens 55 and older with home repairs. Our code docket, staff will have information for any qualifying owner explaining the program. So a couple of good things going on for our community.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to remind everybody that Kids Ride Free this summer. It started on May the 15th. I think that's awesome. Believe this is our 15th year. And I also wanted to congratulate Brown v. Board on 68 years. I thought it was as old as me, but I'm still younger than that. But you know, when I was campaigning, I met a lot of neat people that gave me some pictures and was telling me the history of that. And we need to do more educating. And last but not least, I want to thank my colleagues for allowing me to bring some young people into our chambers to pray and then also to be recognized. Those kids are phenomenal. And to only have a few Tuesdays to ask them to come in, it was very hard to ask different ones that are really genuine. And these kids are smart. They're really, really smart. So just, you know me, I love the young people, and they are our future. And so I look for Kobe Hall. He was awesome. To come back, and maybe city manager, if you can just go ahead and shoot him an application. Maybe we'll just get a jump start on that. But looks like Mr. Wade's position's open there, so. Just kidding.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. I first of all want to congratulate Mr. Wade as well as Josh and Adam, and I'm sorry I get your last names, but I think they all three graduated from KU with an MPA this past weekend. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That is awesome, and I just hope our pay schedule does not increase once you get it. You've heard it said a couple times tonight, but I mean, we hit you guys. Well, I assume everybody's like me and Deputy Mayor. We call you guys with 1,000 different questions throughout the week and emails, and we need answers like 5 minutes before we called. So we put you guys through the ringer, and I appreciate everything you guys do. Secondly, I wanted to thank the owners, and I'm sorry, I looked up your name, but I'm not even going to try. What you guys are doing is a fantastic thing, and it's hard to do. So thank you for your investment in our community. And lastly, I was hoping Mr. Finder hadn't left, but I see him up here, and I can almost feel like, guys, we're trying to be innovative and do things out of the box, and so I can almost see it on his face. But I wanted to let him know that I really appreciate his work on this project. Notwithstanding my skepticism of the original parking plan, this is exactly the type of innovative thing that we need to do with respect to development in our community. So I really appreciate his work and staff's work. I think it was awesome. It's just the parking spaces. And once we had a solution to that, I thought that was fantastic. So I guess, in my opinion, a great work by everyone over this past weeks and months. Thanks.
Councilman Kell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, your acknowledgement of Public Works. My father was a plumber and a maintenance foreman at the Leavenworth Penitentiary, so I know Public Works world is constantly going, and it's a 24/7 job. When something breaks, it needs to be fixed. So I'm very familiar with that lifestyle and how difficult it can be and how intrusive in your family life it can be. So thank you to you for acknowledging our Public Works. Then we also had our graduation weekends last weekend. All of our high schools, Washington University, and it seemed to go very well. Not a lot of incidences I heard of or anything like we've had in the past sometimes. And finally, I'm surprised I completely forgot to bring this up earlier this month, but it's Celiac Awareness Month. And a lot of people don't know what celiac disease is. Now everyone sees gluten-free everywhere. That's kind of where it bases off. My oldest daughter has celiac disease, and she got diagnosed when she was 7. She had issues her whole first 7 years. And I just think becoming aware of the situations, you have companies that, like Frito-Lay, who switched their formula from wheat flour to rice flour, that made my daughter cry when she was allowed to have Doritos again at age 10. Just getting aware of situations and knowing little things like that can make a huge difference I think it was Frito-Lay that said if we have to absorb the 5 cents per package, we'll absorb it as a company and grow our base of customers. It's a valuable investment. But just, learning about different people's situations and ways to, be innovative. As like Ms. Ortiz said, with the young people, if they can sit there and think, how can I help my friend, or how can I help my parent or my grandparent, just trying to be innovative and think of ways maybe some of these things can go away that are afflicting people. But a lot of people don't, like I said, a lot of people don't know what celiac is, but just remember it's gluten-free. Gluten-free diet is your main thing. So we do have a lot of people in Topeka that are afflicted by celiac disease. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to also just share my appreciation for our Public Works Department and also our Utilities Department for keeping us going, for making sure that Topeka doesn't need to stop whenever a weather event does happen. I know that sometimes it can feel a little bit messy, and I appreciate them getting in the mess and getting us out of it. Also, in light of the shooting at Tops Friendly Markets in Buffalo, New York, and with the shooting at, I want to make sure that I'm saying it right, the Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods, California, there has been a lot going on where people are being motivated by hate and people are being motivated by isolation to do horrendous acts. And in the light of celebrating Brown v. Board, I do want to go ahead and read some of Thurgood Marshall, who was the chief counsel for the Browns and Brown v. Board, a little bit of something he said when he was awarded the Liberty Medal by the National Constitution Center of the United States. The Liberty Medal is to recognize leadership in the pursuit of freedom, and Mr. Marshall, former Justice Marshall, was awarded this in 1992. And this is some of what he said. I wish I could say that racism and prejudice were only distant memories. I wish I could say that this nation has traveled far along the road to social justice and that liberty and equality were just around the bend. I wish I could say that America has come to appreciate diversity and to see and accept similarity. But as I look around, I see not a nation of unity, but of division. Afro and white, indigenous and immigrant, rich and poor, educated and illiterate. We cannot play ostrich. Democracy just cannot flourish amid fear. Liberty cannot bloom amid hate. Justice cannot take root amid rage. America must get to work. In the chill climate in which we live, we must go against the prevailing wind. We must dissent from the indifference. We must dissent from the apathy. We must dissent from the fear, the hatred, and the mistrust. We must dissent from a nation that has buried its head in the sand, waiting in vain for the needs of its poor, its elderly, and its sick to disappear and just blow away. We must dissent from a government that has left its young without jobs, education, or hope. We must dissent from the poverty of vision and the absence of moral leadership. We must dissent because America can do better, because America has no choice but to do better. The legal system cannot force open doors and sometimes even, the legal system can force open doors and sometimes even knock down walls, but it cannot build bridges. That job belongs to you and me. Afro and white, rich and poor, educated and illiterate, our fates are bound together. We can run from each other, but we cannot escape each other. We will only attain freedom if we learn to appreciate what is different and muster the courage to discover what is fundamentally the same. America's diversity offers so much richness and opportunity. Take a chance, won't you? Knock down the fences that divide. Tear apart the walls that imprison. Reach out. Freedom lies just on the other side. We should have liberty for all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your thoughts. Councilman Dover.
Good thoughts, Councilwoman. Appreciate that. Just two things. I also want to congratulate Mr. Wade on graduating from the MPA program. I understand he graduated with honors. And I might point out that he did it in 2 years. I went through the same program, took me 7, and I barely made it. So it's a real accomplishment to have a full-time, stressful job and make it through that program. So congratulations. Second thing, quickly, also, somebody already, Councilman Kell mentioned Public Works. It is a fantastic organization. I just wanted to point out that the combined Public Works and Utilities in the city of Topeka has been accredited for close to 20 years now and reaccredited. They were originally the 29th Public Works Department in the country to get accredited, and they've maintained that. So they do a fantastic job. Don't get a lot of kudos, take a lot of heat for spending money, but that's what they have to do to get the job done, and I certainly appreciate it, and I know fellow council people do as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually thought tonight's conversation was a pretty good indication of how things can and should and do sometimes actually work around here. We have some citizens who have stepped up with a project that our community definitely needs. We have a planning department who showed that they understood that need and worked with them through this process to get it in front of us. Some of us had some concerns and questions. We got those addressed here tonight, and we were able to move that project along without slowing it down or impeding it. So see, we can do it every once in a while, especially when it's things we all recognize we really need around here. So 2 quick things, Mayor. First is on Friday, 10 a.m., Public Policy and Finance will have our meeting. The only agenda item is the ARPA application. There's a draft copy that my colleagues have and some draft guidelines. Our goal is to kick something out on Friday, have something before this body in June for discussion, review, hopefully approval. So that we can get that process. We'll also come with a timeline and a few other things. So we are on track to get something to you folks next month. And that, I believe that will be made, those drafts will be posted, Liz told me, so everyone can see them even before the meeting, so to get a look. The second thing is, I believe by Tuesday at noon, next Tuesday at noon, all the children of this city will be out of school and running around, but all the districts at that point will finally be, some are out this week, others are out next week. So be warned, Topeka, they will all be out there roaming around the streets for the summer, including my own child. I mean, not just randomly roaming, maybe a little, I don't know. But I just wanted to, first of all, congratulate all the students for making it through another school year. I also want to take a minute this time of year. Sadly, there are always teachers who retire. And that's, we need those good teachers. One in particular, Melanie Ralston at Topeka West, who was an influence on me growing up, and many other people. We tried to convince her to stick around for a little while, but after almost 40 years, she's ready to go. And I understand that, but to all those teachers who have worked for a long time, and this was your last school year, I congratulate and thank all of them also. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Did you, Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Lesser.
Yeah, not much. Congratulations as well to Mr. Ray. A lot of people don't know he got to walk with his daughter at KU, which is pretty cool. And then he actually even made it to our daughter's graduation party that same day, and then went back. So he's quite the trooper. So congratulations, Steve-O. And yeah, thanks, Hannah, for the comments. I'm in New Jersey on business, and it is definitely different up here right now, and unfortunately. Hopefully that stuff will stop happening at some point in time. But anyway, prayers to all those families that were affected by that. And I did check my calendar. Since we don't have a meeting next Tuesday, I am available next Tuesday, Mr. Mayor, so just so you know.
Thank you. That's the first one to respond then to the request. Appreciate it. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Short list here. I too have a conflict on June 4th for the parking meeting, but I'm with Councilman Lesser, if the 24th or the 31st, if people are going to be around, maybe those Tuesday nights would work a little better. I'm going to throw the 31st in my votes, I think, if it works for anybody else. I really do appreciate getting right on that and having us do a deep dive. I'm hopeful that we can do the same thing about City Hall. I didn't like putting that off or putting a wrench in it either, so maybe that's already something people are getting ready to move forward. Also, a number of us have been working on some new ventures that are about to pop for our neighborhoods. The Dreams program is having an onboarding meeting with anybody from any of the neighborhoods that's interested. Tomorrow evening, people can can go to the Holiday Building or get on via Zoom. There's a lot of information on the city's website under the city manager's page, because that's where our community engagement department is, but community engagement, planning, and housing, and others have worked hard on that. It's interdepartmental. So have a peek at that and pass the word around if people are in LMI organized NIA neighborhoods. It is targeted at them at this point. But this is an opportunity what we knew of as the SORT program will be every other year, and specific very low-income neighborhoods can apply for that. But other than that, what they're calling Dreams 2 is open to all the neighborhoods to apply for projects that they think will be significant for their neighborhoods. And there also is a Dreams 3, which is going to be available every year, smaller amounts of money that can be either infrastructure or community building in other ways. So we really want to get everybody rolling on that. And thanks to all the staff that have been involved in getting those. We know there's still more to do. You've heard me say that, but it's a tremendous start to get going on that program. Also, Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and I have been involved in the Change Our Culture, very multidimensional initiative. And the first piece of that is kicking off this week as well. That is a mowing program. It has been offered through the city's Contracts and Procurement Division, and there is a briefing on that on the morning of the 19th this week in the traditional contracts and procurement sense. But that is to get, we're using some federal money to provide some supplemental dollars to people that want to develop a fixed rate mowing program that can be implemented in LMI neighborhoods, knowing that in many cases people could pay, but they don't know how to do that contracting, don't know anybody to hire to get their mowing done. That will be followed by recruitment for volunteers who can do it for people who cannot afford it at all, ideally neighbors or adopted in the nearby a business or a church or a group that goes out and does an adopting. So watch for that and certainly encourage people to be involved. Last but not least, it was with great pride that I watched the entire ceremony for the USS Frank Peterson Jr. To be commissioned. It is the top-of-the-line, brand new Navy destroyer. It was commissioned in the Charleston Harbor and will be based in Hawaii. There was a lot of discussion, here we are on the anniversary of Brown v. Board as well, about the story. Frank Peterson Jr. grew up here. His dad was a radio repairman, and the shop was down around 21st in Kansas. He graduated from Topeka High, was the first African-American Marine airman, and the first African-American general in the Marines in the U.S. history. And that was at a time, as you can imagine, he graduated from Topeka High in 1949, so very much vintage Brown v. Board. And it was very groundbreaking, and it was tough. The first people that spoke to him after he was ready to enter into the active service said they thought he looked like he might make a good steward. And he, as the stories went at the commission, I highly recommend it, by the way. The storytelling was amazing. But he had bigger dreams than that and said, no, thank you. What can I do? In the course of that ceremony, everyone from colleagues of his who were in their 90s who were there. The keynoter was a friend of his who had served in the Navy. There were 18 black black Marines that served together, and they followed each other and knew each other's stories, and he told some of those, and they were, as you can imagine, pretty poignant about getting through service at that time. The Secretary of the Navy spoke about how important it was to integrate services and be inclusive for all people today. And it was clear that that was a genuine commitment on his part personally and on the part of the Navy. And the wrap-up of that program was that they asked the personnel who were to serve on the ship, it's a process that they do, to 2 at a time run on board and take their positions on that ship. And it was kind of hard to count because that's a pretty big ship. But I would suggest to you that if you counted, that half of those Navy officers of all ranks were women, and half of them were minorities on that new destroyer. It was pretty powerful to see not only the talk, but the progress that the Navy has made. And again, with the ship named after Frank Peterson Jr. from Topeka. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a handful of things. One is following up on Councilwoman Hiller's remarks. This is a call out, a shout out to all the mowers, all the wannabe intentional, hardworking mowers, all the mowers in LMI communities that get a hold of that RFP. And we need you, right? Your neighborhoods need you, Topeka needs you. And also volunteers, be ready, because it's time for us to roll up our sleeves to see if we can help reimagine a better, even better Topeka. And it's time for neighborhoods even more to start leaning in towards each other. And I know that we can do it, that we can do it together. And so I'm really looking forward to what the future holds for the possibilities of this initiative. I'd like to also wish my husband an early happy birthday on May 23rd. My dad, who will be 85 on May 31st. Love you both. And also just to follow up on what Councilwoman Nager was speaking of, we still understand that it is very traumatic to be Black in America. That in some cases, it can be a death sentence to be Black in America. And I don't know how we're going to get through this other than we have to focus on intention and truth. The truth of our history doesn't have to be condemnation of this country. But it is part of the problem that is creating what I believe is part of the problem of what is creating the intense violence that we are witnessing. Just like with the boarding school Native American children in both Canada and the United States, the horrors that they went through to take the savage out of them, right? And what we still see in the fields when we see that Central Americans and Mexicans feed this country. They feed this country, and yet they're at the bottom of the pole in so many ways. I mean, this is the great experiment, America. And so I think that the experiment is really being tested. And without relearning and without learning how to come together, and I don't profess to be an expert at any of that, we're going to lose big time. And so prayers to all the families and those that lost their lives, and prayers for that incredibly, incredibly troubled soul that did such horrific violence. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. To address what was said earlier about being able to have young people in the audience and bring them into this chamber and to acknowledge the basketball team and other youth who are really making a difference in our community. you know, we say on a regular basis they are future, but they are our present right now. They really are. And if we are going to have some changes happen, we have to keep that in mind and put our hopes with them. And at every opportunity we get to applaud and get excited about what they do, I encourage us to do that. I don't know if the rest of the governing body received an invitation, but I'm guessing we all did, from a student from French Middle School. Because it's called the Save the City. I've been to it 3 or 4 or 5 times, I guess. It's only for an hour, from 3 to 4, tomorrow at French Middle School. And if you've got the time, stop in there, even if you stop in for half an hour or so, and visit with those students. They are so proud of what they put out there in their presentations and their experiments. And they pat each other on the back, you know, they encourage each other. You're excited to see that kind of learning and camaraderie going on at that level. So I encourage you, if you have the time, if you haven't done it before, you will enjoy it. They will swarm you, believe me, once they find out you're an elected official. So if you did not receive an email inviting you there, I will invite you on their behalf to go there. So thank you very much.
Mayor, could I add one thing?
No. Councilwoman Miller.
I failed to give the mayor credit when I was talking about the USS Frank Peterson Jr. because there is a 4th proclamation from this past week. The mayor did send a proclamation from Topeka to the Navy and it will travel with that ship. If you ever happen to get a chance to see it and be on it, there will be a display board. My understanding is that proclamation and the Kansas coin that I sent will also travel with that ship wherever it goes. So thank you, Mayor, for doing that as well on our behalf.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, that's done with announcements. There is a need for 2 executive sessions this evening. If the city attorney would read, please.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 30 minutes for consultation with the city attorney to discuss attorney-client privilege matters regarding specific legal advice as justified by KSA 7543-19B2. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers. The following staff are requested to assist the governing body: interim city manager Cochran and city attorney Stanley.
Okay, we've heard the motion for executive session. Entertaining a motion. Motion to move by Councilman Dobers, second by Councilman Kell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carried. We will adjourn after a 10-minute recess and then start our first executive session. Thank you all.
Just quit on me.
Okay, thank you. We've are back in open meeting now and reconvening. During our first executive session, it was determined there is not a need for a second executive session. So unless there is any further business to come before this body, the meeting is adjourned.